الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So we continue discussing the book Nukhbatul Fikr by Hafid ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. And as we had mentioned before, that this particular book, that it discusses the topic or the subject of ilm al-hadith, and more so Mustal al-hadith. So matter that relates to the principles of hadith, how to identify what is said to be hadith al-sahih, hadith al-hasan, hadith al-da'if, and the different types. Then this particular book, it covers these topics. So in the last topic that we were discussing, that we were covering matter pertaining to hadith sahih, so still discussing matter pertaining to hadith sahih. So generally concerning the discussion that we're having regarding hadith sahih, that we have started off by first mentioning hadith sahih by way of its definition linguistically and also istilahan according to the ulama of hadith. So we had mentioned that we discussed that matter, and more so what is mentioned or what is or it is explained by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala. Then we mention second, after the ta'rif, the definition of hadith as-sahih. Then we mention second, that hadith sahih also have conditions. So we mentioned that there's 5 conditions that should be in place. If these conditions are fully met, then hadith considered to be sahih. Then we mentioned after this concerning that, so we're in discussing the shurut of hadith sahih, the condition of hadith sahih, which are khamsa, ittisal sanad. And we discuss also that in some more detail as to what is meant by ittisal sanad. Then the second condition is dabt al-riwat. We discuss concerning what is dabt al-riwat, or the narrator's ability to retain that information by way of something which is memorized or something which is recorded. Then after we discuss the third matter, which is dabt al-riwat. Then we discuss concerning matters relating to that we're concerning that adalatul rawat. So discussing also the hadala, the level of the standing of the narrator, that they should be a certain standing regarding their level of commitment to Islam, and also the level of how they carry out Islam. Then also we discuss what is said to be adalatul rawat. So the level of concerning their level of their commitment to Islam. We discuss also that matter. Then we discuss, so the next matter to be discussed as tafsil, more a little detail relating to shurut hadith sahih, that we mentioned today, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, which is salamat or adam al-illa wa adam al-shudhu. So these are the 2 that remains to be discussed of those matters pertaining to the shurut of hadith sahih. Then of other things to be covered, we'll discuss after concerning what's the hukum regarding hukum al-amal bil hadith sahih, what's the ruling pertaining to acting upon hadith sahih. And also matters regarding maratib hadith sahih to be covered, madan, the sources or reference sources of hadith sahih, of that of qadim and hadith. And other matters that we discuss concerning aksam or anwa hadith sahih. So those things are part of the discussion regarding hadith sahih. So we're still at the discussion regarding shurut hadith sahih with some tafsil. So that hadith sahih, there are 5 conditions: ittisal sanad, second, dabt al-rawat, where all the narrators a certain level of being able to be precise regarding their narration, which is hadith sahih, tamat al-dabt. So tamat dabt tam, they should have like more of very high standards in their dabt. Then the third condition is adalatul rawat, that narrator of certain standing and a level regarding their level of commitment to Islam and practice of Islam, and also their conduct and their behavior. So these things that they factor in regarding the narrator. Then as for the next matter to be discussed, as mentioned by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah in his explanation, salamat min al-illa wa salamat min al-shudud. So we discussed concerning salamat min al-shudud. So salat min al-shudud, so hadith are what is said to be al-shadh, as mentioned here by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala. So adam al-shudud, or said illa, we start with illa first. So adam al-illa. So they mentioned concerning that al-illa can that what is intended by the ulama of hadith, that hadith al-mu'all, as mentioned regarding that they have stated regarding hadith al-mu'all, that the definition that is given by the ulama regarding salamat min al-illah, that I mentioned regarding concerning that illah is defined as asbabun khafiyun. So these are ways that are hidden, taqdah fi sihhat al-hadith, that will impact negatively on the authenticity of the hadith. So these are asbab khafi, taqdah. So these are ways that will somewhat bring a fault or criticism to the hadith, being graded as as authentic. What I mentioned, وَظَاهِرُهُ, even though what is apparent from the hadith, ظَاهِرُهُ salama min, even though the hadith seems to be free from any form of hidden defects or hidden fault. So that is what they refer to as al-illah. So al-illah, they mention asbabun khafi, that these are hidden factors that will contribute to the hadith being disregarded, even though what is apparent, the hadith seem to be authentic or seem to be okay. So that is what is referred to as al-illah. So they mention regarding concern this matter regarding al-illah, that that also will be discussed by itself later in some detail. So this matter regarding al-illah, that at even some of the ulama in their definition, we just mention it's a general thing, but not to delve too much into it, just to be mindful that some of the ulama, when they mention regarding that, so with illah, they mention illatun qadih, khafi. That is illah should be something which is illah, which is khafi, qadih, that is a fault in the hadith, but something which is hidden. So they mentioned that al-illah is of two types. So all the ulama of hadith at times mention illatun zahir, those illah which is very apparent, such as they say inqita wal hadith al-mursal. So these type of breakage, these type of illah, these type of fault in the hadith are very apparent. Then also you have those one which is the one that we're discussing, illatun khafi, those one which are said to be hidden, so not per se detected by any person. It requires a person that have to look very carefully. So these things are not obvious, and you have the more obvious illah that occurs in hadith. So illah here that is being discussed is illatun khafi, these illah that are khafi. So they mention regarding concerning that with this matter, that these illah though, that they do impact on the hadith being criticized. So they mention that one, that these illah are khafi, and what seems apparent, the hadith seems to be okay. But that's not the case. That's not the case. And some of the ulama, some of them mention regarding concerning these illatul khafi, are more so these type of illah that it revolves around those narrators who are said to be thiqat. So these illatul khafi are those that more so it involves narrators who are said to be thiqat. So those ones that you would not, that are the thiqat, that generally accept their narration, that these are the ones sometimes may make errors, and you have to be able to can detect their errors. And that becomes, those one become khafi, become somewhat, one become very hidden, that is not very obvious. Compared to the person who is daif, then his issues become more apparent. So they mentioned that these are the illah that normally, which is, they say the illah, which is a khata, an error or awham or mistakes that have come from people who are said to be narrators who are thiqat, or thiqat, trustworthy. And I mentioned this type, but these are the matters that are more of the more very detailed matters regarding ilm al-hadith. So this matter, when I mentioned regarding concerning this matter, so of ways of detecting hadith, illat al-hadith. Of those ways is they mention al-jam al-turuq. So regarding concern that this is for a person to detect these, it requires a person and jam to combine or together all the narration around upon this hadith. So a hadith, particular hadith is being studied, the person have to look at all its all the turuq, all the different parts of the hadith, and also all the wording of the hadith. As this illah, it occurs in the sanad and also in the matan. The illah can occur in the sanad or in the matan, in the chain, and also in the text, the wording of the hadith. So is being able to combine gather all the narration of those of that hadith, and then the person is able then to identify that there's an illah, that there's an error that may be missed. So that matter I mentioned concerning that that is concerned to be illatun qadi'ah. So you might find an illah at times that may occur in a hadith, but it's not qadih. It does not impact negatively on the hadith, because that illah may be there, but it's not something which is maybe something which is a minor. The person say maybe something which is minor but does not have Sufyan. The person mentioned Sufyan, but the person is unclear as to which Sufyan. But Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan al-Thawri, whichever one of them, they are thiqat. So it may be an illah, you don't know Sufyan, but in reality, when you come to get to understand of to who is the person, then it does not per se impact negatively on the hadith. But initially it seems to be an illah. So that's concerning that matter regarding illah, as we mentioned, jam' al-turuq wa nadhar fil qara'in, where the person have to gather all the narrations and also then make that comparison, and then they're able to can detect the illah that occurs in the hadith. So as we said, that may be discussed or to be discussed further regarding illah. Then the next of those conditions that they have mentioned, so as we mentioned also, that this illah, it occurs in the sanad and also in the matan. So illah al-qadih can occur in the sanad regarding narrators, and also it can occur in the matan. So we discussed of those things regarding hadith. I mentioned nakara, matters regarding ash-shudhuz, then that come into effect regarding detecting these illah. The next of the thing that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah he mentioned regarding the matter is, as he mentioned concerning that salama or adam ash-shudhuz, that hadith also for be authentic, that has to be free from any form of shudhuz or being shadh, and we'll discuss concerning what is meant by this. So any form of thing which is odd, then being mindful of this. They mention regarding concerning ash-shudhuz, lugatan, they mention infirad. So shudhuz, shadh, infirad, that's of the meaning that is giving linguistically. As for what is meant by shadh, according to the ulama of hadith, that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, when he discussed concerning hadith to shadh, they mentioned lugatan, infirad. Then they mentioned that istilahan, that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, when he mentioned regarding ash-shadh, as he mentioned in an-Nuzha, when he mentioned hadith ash-shadh, he mentioned that istilahan ما يخالف فيه الراوي من وأرجع منه. So he mentioned that what is hadith shadh, istilahan, according to the ulama of hadith, they mention ما يخالف, that فيه راوي, when a narrator he contradicts someone who is, he mentioned أرجح منه, that someone who is more reliable than he is. So narrator يخالف, a narrator who goes against someone that is more reliable than they are. And some they mention regarding concerning the other definition is given regarding, they mention أن يخالف راوي المقبول, that a person who is said to be the rawi maqbul must be one who's maqbul, or a one who's accepted, or one who's thiqa. So the narrator that is contradicting someone else, that narrator on his own is said to be a thiqa, a trustworthy narrator, but in this scenario of shadh, he is contradicting, opposing someone who is also thiqa, and in this case maybe more reliable than he is. So it goes by case. So that's concerning what is meant by hadith ash-shadh, according to Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. And that definition regarding an yukhalif al-maqbul man huwa arja minhu, that's the definition of shadh, that is the standard, that is one of the definition that is more widely used today. That's the definition that is more widely used today. That's the definition by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. With hadith ash-shadh, of some of the ulama, when they mention regarding concern, they said shadh in Hadith Sahih, they mention shadh one nakara. So they add another wording to shadh, which is nakara. But some mention that shadh also, nakara also is a part of what can be said to be of shadh, if not seen as something which is much different. So, but overall, when they define hadith as sahih, they'll use the word shadh, not nakara. So hadith as shadh, hadith as sahih, they'll mention adam al-illa wa adam al-shudhuz. And they don't mention an-nakara, as we mentioned that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah does not include the word nakara in his definition of hadith as-sahih, and that's what is now the general established practice and definition. As for what is said regarding hadith shadh, that the narrator who is contradicting another, the ulama mentioned he has to be one who said to be maqbool. So the narrator who's contradicting or is opposing someone, then they mentioned he has to be someone who said to be maqbool. He himself is the one who's accepted narrator, whether in the highest level of being thiqat, but he should be one who said to be maqbool. Or they mention suduq of that category. But we mention khalif man wa awla minhu or arjah. So he goes against someone who that is more reliable than he is. And some mention that or he go against a group of people. So one going against others, a group of narrators. So it could be him going against another person, between him and another person. That person is more arja minhu, as a single person, but that person is more reliable on this matter than he is. Or the person ahfaz, the person, by way of the person being more reliable, the person may be ahfaz, the person have a better memory than they are, than that person that is contradicting them. Or that that person could be sahib al-qissa, that person, the one who the matter relates to them. They are sahib al-qissa, so they have more, that they are more reliable from that regards. Another of those things that mukhalifa, that they mention here, man huwa awthaq wa man huwa arja minhu, as they mention that hadith al-thalatha and yarwi rawi thiqa hadithan yukhalif fihi man huwa awthaq minhu aw biqabul, or one who's awthaq wa arjah minhu, or one who's awla, that is more appropriate to accept their narrations in this particular case. So it could be at times where that person, one person is going against a group of other narrators. So again, amongst his colleagues, one narrator with the other colleague, they are saying something that he did not say, or he mentioned something hadith that they did not mention. So it becomes that one against others of his colleagues. So those are those matters that relates to hadith being said to be at times shadh. Another category of hadith to shadh, so the ulama sometimes they categorize hadith to shadh into two categories. That's the first category and the first definition. Then I mentioned that hadith athani and yatafarrad al-rawi, so a person who a single narrator, yatafarrad, that a single narrator mentioned something like in the, and that is not mentioned by others. He mentioned something not stated or mentioned by others, and that not being mentioned by others could mean that he has said a word or a sentence that the others of his colleague did not say that word or that sentence. So in that case, he may have added words that they did not mention. He mentioned it as a single narrator, but his other colleagues did not mention that particular wording or sentence. And I mentioned regarding concerning that, so that's concerning ashad, that I mentioned that also man yuhtamal ma'ahu tafarrud, that a person also that him saying something on his own that is not of that level where what he's saying becomes acceptable, it becomes questionable. So him on his own saying that thing, it raised some question signs. So that's concerning hadith ashadh. Hadith ashadh. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah that mentioned that definition was said that's the more widely used definition today regarding hadith ashadh, which is the first one. We mentioned an yarri al-rawi thika. We find a narrator who said to be thika hadithan, who narrates a hadith. يخالف فيه من هو أوثق أو أرجع منه, where he contradicts others who are more reliable and more deserving to be accepted over him. That's concerning hadith ashadh, as mentioned here. But we said also you have cases where tafarrud, that a single person saying something not said by others. Where that thing is present, you have added words then to the hadith that others did not add. They have a discussion regarding hadith ashadh. We just kind of cite the matter without going into details on the next level that can be discussed regarding concerning shurut al hadith ashadh. Of some mention, is it mukhalafa or infirad? Are these things of concern? So that mukhalafa, with a person, that there must be a mukhalafa for the hadith to be deemed as shadh, does the person have to contradict others? Or infirad, or it goes back to the person is saying something, he's saying something that others did not say. Even though he may not contradict them. He's just saying something, words are being added by him that others did not mention. Or for shadh, it requires that it's a single narrator or minority saying something the majority did not say. So that shadh, infirad, single narrator saying something that others did not say. Also, the second of the condition to be looked at regarding al-mukhalafa, is there any form of contradiction? Is that also of the criteria? The person must contradict others. If there's no contradiction, then both hadith are accepted because they're not opposing or contradicting each other. Or infirad, or just about a person that يتحمل تفرده, that the person who's saying something that himself, it raised a question sign of what he's saying. He just raised eyebrows. So those are the methods they discussed regarding hadith ashadh. And this impact are also on the ruling on the hadith being shadh, based upon those things that we just mentioned. Hadith ashadh, so with I said no, that mentioned adam ashadh, that hadith is considered to be unacceptable, and we'll discuss that more in detail. We'll discuss that in its own this topic. It will be discussed, as also you'll find the ulama regarding that also a shudud, that they mention it occurs in the sanad and also in the matan. Sanad wa matan. And these things are based upon shudud regarding the level of the dabt of the rawi. So they go to the level of the preciseness of the rawi, the dabt of the rawi, and also the state of that rawi. Is he one who's thiqah and the likes? His level of being thiqah, reliable, also is come into play. So those are the methods they discuss regarding some of the methods regarding hadith that is said to be adam ash-shudhuz. Adam ash-shudhuz. So the ulama sometimes they will said that the word I will discuss concerning the word shadh, what the ulama of past was a word that was used often. We may not find that. The ulama mentioned that the word shadh amongst the ulama of old, they may not use the word shadh very often, as it is more used later on. So the word shadh as to being used by the ulama of the classical scholars, the old scholars of hadith, compared to the ones who came after, that the ones after use it more than the ones the latter scholar use more than the ones who came before them. And also with shadh, I will discuss what the ones who use it in the early days, what did they intend by shadh, and other words that they used can somewhat give the understanding of hadith being we said not unaccepted. They use the word concerning hadith al-mahfuz compared to one that's accepted and one which is rejected, which today we will call shadh. So when it's rejected, they'll mention that laysa bi-mahfuz. So those are the things that we'll discuss. Or safar bihi fulan, that this individual is a single narrator using this wording. So that's concerning hadith compared to others of his colleagues, compared to others of his colleagues. So those are some of the matter we'll discuss more in detail regarding hadith shadh or the mabahith al-shadh when they discuss separately by themselves. The way to identify al-illah or shudud both fall into the person able to combine all the narration of the hadith as a puzzle and then see who may have said things that others did not say, then the person can make that comparison. So based upon qara'in, where the person have to gather all the hadith on that particular topic or that with a particular wording, that similar wording with all different narrations or ways the hadith was mentioned, then he can then see as to is there consistency from all, or there seems to be some that are saying things that others did not say. So that also of those things regarding how to detect ashad, require the person to take on that approach. And of those things regarding that of the ulama who master the science regarding ashad, they mentioned not many. So even amongst the ulama of hadith who are known to have mastered the science of shadh, not many. And we'll give some name of those who will play a pivotal role regarding matter pertaining hadith ashadh. So so that's concerning what I will discuss ziyadat al-thiqah and how it plays on matter concerning ashadh, that to be discussed at this later on. So we have now covered, we will now stop at this point regarding what we discussed regarding shurut hadith sahih, which are khamsa. So we have covered now with some tafsil, as some will be discussed again further regarding hadith as-sahih. It has 5 conditions. First, ittisal sanad. We cover that with a little detail, what is meant by this. Second, we discuss ad-dabt wal-hifz ar-rawi, the person's ability to memorize the hadith, retain the hadith, and what is said regarding this. Third, we discuss adalatul rawat, what's the credibility of the narrators, the level of credibility of the narrators regarding their level of commitment to Islam by doing things which is right and avoiding things of evil, and also their conduct and behavior. That also being taken into consideration of hadith of the narrators. So the ulama of hadith also would take into consideration the person as the narrator, his level of conduct and behavior with other factors. So should a talibul ilm that he has to be very mindful regarding his conduct and behavior and how he may be perceived and judged by others. Then al-hadith sahih, the next and the fourth condition, adam al-illah. I will discuss that these are things that are hidden defects that occurs in the hadith. And even the hadith may seem to be okay. And you find that in these, and the next of those things, the fifth condition, adam al-shuzuz, where that infirad or mukhalafa occurring from a narrator who said to be thiqah, one who is reliable. And it shows also, the ulama mentioned that it shows regarding even thiqat of the highest level, that no one is infallible. And even they can make errors. And they make errors. But the thing is identifying their errors. So because they're said to be thiqat, reliable, trustworthy, precise in the narration, to detect their errors, it requires more effort. So you have to gather all the narrations to see if there's any error that may have occurred. And it shows regarding, so those are the 5 conditions regarding hadith sahih. Of those 5 conditions, there's 3 that has to be present and 2 that have to be absent. So the 3 that needs to be present and more easy to detect: ittisal al-sanad, the isnad is complete, connected, need to be present, that each narrator, and have to be proven that each narrator is said to be thiqah, credible, and 3rd, dabt, that you have to improve the narrator, that narrator, that's a person that he has good memory. So these things that have to be present. Then also you have 2 things that also the person have to try to make sure those things are absent, not present: adam al-illa, these hidden defects, and adam al-shudud, the hadith is not odd. The hadith is not odd. So those are the matters the person have to take into consideration regarding looking and studying hadith. So these things require work and effort. It requires a lot of work and effort in studying each hadith and what is attached to it. The next of those things that we mentioned regarding this discussion regarding hadith. So we discussed concerning shurut al-hadith with some tafsil. The next matter would be the 4th matter for to be discussed: hukum amal bi hadith sahih. Was a ruling in acting upon hadith which is sahih. So after for example, the ulama have concluded hadith is sahih. How would that benefit us? How would that impact upon us and our Islam? With the ulama, they mentioned regarding concerning the impact of this would be the hukum hadith sahih, that they mentioned that one, hadith sahih of different maratib, of different levels, I will cover. But as for what of the hukum that is taken from hadith sahih, in concluding hadith sahih, that of those things, that one, that hadith becomes hujjah, it becomes a form of hujjah, it becomes an evidence or it becomes an authority in Islam. So hadith sahih, it forms as a hujjah. So hadith sahih, it becomes an hujjah, it becomes a dalil, a some form of proof that can be used in Islam. So that's the thing concerning the hadith is that an authority, hujjatul hadith sahih. So hadith sahih, it becomes a hujjah, it becomes a proof and an evidence where the person can use this hadith, if it's authentic, to come to draw conclusion or rulings regarding matters relating to i'tiqad, Islamic belief, where the hadith is said to be from the category of hadith al-ahad. They can be used as evidence regarding belief, Islamic belief, in any matter of belief, even of the unseen. Also, second, in matter regarding ahkam al-Islam, regarding matters pertaining to halal and haram, this is wajib, this is mustahab. Hadith sahih can be used as a regarding drawing conclusion or hukum on matters relating to ahkam al-Islam. Third area that it can be used regarding matters regarding fada'il wal adab. So regarding matters regarding virtuous and Islamic mannerism and conduct, hadith sahih can be used on these topics. So matter regarding the deen, in overall, or matter pertaining to the deen, hadith as-sahih becomes an authority if it's authenticated. Second of the hukum hadith sahih, wujub al-amal bihi. It becomes also compulsory for us to act upon those hadith illa bi'aridin sahih shar'an, that except that there's something that contradicts this Islamically. So hadith sahih, it becomes compulsory if the hadith have been graded as authentic. Then what this means, that the Muslim then should act according to it with the right understanding, without doubt, unless there's something to say otherwise from the Sharia. So I mentioned that those things that can be said otherwise, that a person may not act upon a hadith as-sahih, is that one, the hadith could be that mu'arid, the thing that may remove remove its ruling, is that hadith is mansukh. is classified as hadith which is mansukh. Hadith have been in the bab of nasikh wal mansukh. Hadith have been abrogated. So the bab of abrogation, that the hadith may fall into that category where one hadith at some point was used at that time, then later on the Prophet ﷺ changed that ruling. So in that case, the hadith is authentic, but not to be acted upon because it's hadith which is mansukh. Hadith have been abrogated. And there's cases and books on that topic, and that will be discussed again later further. Also ariz, that may be ayah or hadith may be authentic but not acted upon because of it fall into the that fall into we can ijma, that the people of ilm don't act upon that hadith. I find that ijma, the hadith authentic, but there's an ijma that the people do not act upon, the ulama agree upon the hadith is not to be carried out, or there's some factors relating to that hadith. So you find that Tirmidhi rahimahullah in his book that mentioned that regarding concern all his, that he mentioned that sometimes this occur. Hadith may be authentic, but the ulama does not act according to it for factors. So these are things also that the general things regarding that the ruling concerning hukum hadith da'if, that in general that we accept those hadith as a form of authority in Islam and a proof and an evidence in Islam, and that's across the board in matters of aqidah, no distinction made there, matters in al-fiqh wal-ahkam al-shar'iyyah, and also in areas of fadahil, matters regarding adab wal-akhlaq, matters, so these matters that hadith sahih is an authority in all those areas, on all the matters regarding ad-deen. Second, matters pertaining to regarding the hukum of hadith sahih, that wujub al-amal bih, that it become compulsory upon us to act according to that hadith, unless there's a valid reason shar'an to say no, not based upon my mind or people reasoning, some people reasoning, that's not shar'i. So that to be an Islamic valid reason of bab al-nasikh wal-mansukh or al-ijma' on this matter. So those are the reasons. We'll end with this, inshallah ta'ala, with this session, and complete the remaining session regarding that Madhan Hadith as-Sahih, Maratib Hadith as-Sahih, Anwa Hadith as-Sahih. Madhan meaning the books of Hadith as-Sahih, we'll discuss in the next session. So as for Mithal Hadith as-Sahih, we give an example of Hadith as-Sahih. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he mentioned in his book, قال, in the first hadith he mentioned in his book, قال حدثنا حميدي عبد الله بن زبير قال حدثنا سفيان قال حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري قال أخبرني محمد ابن إبراهيم تيمي قال أنه سمع القمة ابن وقاص الليثي يقول سمعت عمر ibn Khattab رضي الله عنه على منبر, that he heard Umar al-Khattab upon the minbar, قال, saying, سمعت رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام, that he heard the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام saying, يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات الحديث, إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل من ما نوى الحديث. So he mentioned that hadith to the end of the hadith, that it mentioned regarding concerning that all these narrators that they use regarding that all of them are known narrators, Humaydi, Sufyan, Yahya ibn Sa'id, Muhammad ibn Ibrahim, Alqama ibn Waqqas, Umar ibn Khattab, all are known, and each heard, and also all are said to be thiqat, and also each of them use wording indicating, showing that they heard from the hadith directly from that person, they heard the hadith from that person, or they heard from that person. So they use even the wordings that indicates ittisal. But they use the word sami'tu, or they use the word haddathana, or they use the word sami'tu, or akhbarana. So all of these indicating that they heard the hadith from the person before them. I heard, I was informed by such and such person. So they indicate haddathana, all those kinds of indicating that, and all those narrators said to be students of each other. Students of each other. So everyone, so it shows ittisal sanad. Second, all of them know to be a'immatil kibar, regarding the level of hifz wa dhabt, and also ad-adala, trustworthy. And and also the hadith that there's no hadith that challenge this hadith by way of illatun qadiha khafiyya when compared. And also this hadith, there's nothing that's said to be shadh about the hadith that is not conflicting or somewhat odd, contrary to other hadiths. So with these things they mention, the hadith becomes sahih. The hadith becomes sahih. So that's just a brief with the hadith which is well known regarding this particular hadith. So as we'll discuss, knowing the narrator, there's books that are specific to those to narrators that a person will use as reference and go back to know about the narrators, books of Tarajum al-Rawat. Then also with those books you get to know the name of the narrator, when he was born, when he died, who are his teachers, who are his students, where he traveled, some at times. So these books will cover these things. So you get an understanding regarding, so you get an understanding of the narrator, any criticism that is said about the narrator, or anything that is said for the narrator. So the books of Rijal will give you some insight into these matters to some degree. So you get to have some information about the narrator, and based upon what is mentioned, then you can come to a conclusion about the narrator, whether for or against him. Then also with this ittisal, knowing who is his teacher, knowing the name of the narrator, what have been said, then also knowing what is said regarding that narrator, regarding his level of dhabt, how precise he is regarding his narration. Is there anything character flaws in the narrator? Those things also will be highlighted. And in what area is there? And so anything that needs to be said will be drawn from what has been mentioned regarding in the biography of that narrator, Tarajum al-Rawat, and other sources that are used to assist in that area. So with all these things, I look into and also comparing between that narration with similar narration of that hadith to see, is there anything regarding illatun qadih or shudhud that may occur with this particular narration. So each hadith is studied as a case. So that inshallah ta'ala will end this discussion, and inshallah bi'awnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next session we'll try to complete regarding hadith sahih, which is discussing matter pertaining to the other factor that we have mentioned regarding, just to give some more insight regarding maratib al-rawat or hadith, the different level of authenticity, anwa hadith sahih, different types of hadith sahih or levels of hadith sahih, also madan, the sources and the books of hadith sahih, whether those of the ulama of past or of those of contemporaries. Then we'll discuss concerning matter relating to, sometimes it's a qawl al-ulama, hada hadithun sahih wa hada hadith wa isnaduhu sahih. Is there a difference in those wordings? And then we'll discuss matters. So those are things to be covered in the next session regarding the topic of hadith al-sahih. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهذه إلى سبيل والآخر دعوانا الحمد لله آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How long?